Hey, this is Jim Daneker from Arcade Orchestra. Welcome to Legends and Legacies, featuring iconic artists who shaped the sound, the look, and the timeless impact of the 80s. These are the voices who defined a generation. Today's guest joins us from across the pond via Zoom. He's an absolute legend and a blast to talk to. I guarantee you've heard his work countless times since his band made a massive splash in the 1985 hit movie, The Breakfast Club. Let's get into it. By way of an introduction here, I'll just say joining us all the way from Glasgow, Scotland, I want to welcome original member and keyboard player for one of the biggest bands of all time, certainly of the 80s, Mick MacNeil of Simple Minds. Welcome, and thank you so much for being part of this.
Right, thank you very much for
really
inviting me, Jim.
Lot.
And I'm actually on the Western Isles of Scotland in a tiny
That's
little
right.
island.
You told me that. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to promote the island more to some of you Americans. In fact, if it's a nice day, I'm so west of Scotland, in the Scottish Western Isles. On a clear day, I can see the Statue of Liberty.
That's great.
That's how close we are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, all right. So push a little tourism for where you live, and we'll be off. So, Mick, from my reading, you grew up kind of in the traditional music world in Scotland. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your mom got you playing piano and accordion.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit of your journey. Tell us your musical upbringing and the path that led you to Simple Minds.
Well, my mother was a bit of a musician, was self-taught like a lot of the Highland folk up here. They would just tell stories, pull out a bagpipe, pull out a chanter, pull out a melodeon, and make it all up what they remember and tell it. And she was quite insistent that all I've got 7 children in her family, 7 siblings, and she wanted to give us all an opportunity to learn music properly. And I think came up where accordion classes and music lessons was on the offer. And she's almost like, right, who wants to do the accordion? Who wants to do the drum? Who wants to do the pipes? It was all kind of trad stuff. So I thought, I didn't really know much about the accordion. I kind of regretted it quite quickly when I realised I had to carry this big box around Glasgow. But I took the accordion, and then I got dug in from that point. But the teacher I had, Jimmy Blair, his name was, he wasn't really that strict on having Scottish trad music. It was a much wider range. It was quite classical, and he had his own orchestra. It was an accordion orchestra. So he ended up doing like Strauss waltzes and various more kind of European style kind of music. You know, it was the Scottish stuff was really as a sideline. I think he would encourage us to not have that Scottish jiggy thing going on. Mm-hmm. It had much more kind of depth to the accordion than just that kind of music. So that's kind of how it all started, Jim.
Okay. So what did you listen to growing up? You said you grew up in the 60s, obviously, and...
Well, it's kind of, 60s. And I mean, the music, apart from what I was actually doing myself, it was on my mother's music collection, which was pretty dire. You'll have never heard of this guy called Callum Kennedy.
Okay.
Now, he is the voice, in my opinion, still, I don't think there is a singer in Scotland that comes close to this guy.
Yeah.
He's a velvet voice. He mostly sings in Gaelic.
Okay.
But we had his entire record collection.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we had a couple of selected kind of hardcore Irish stuff.
Yeah.
There was never anything else. When my older sister eventually got into her teenagers and started having parties, her friends would come in and kind of would hear other kind of maybe the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. And I always remember one time, and I spoke about this quite recently, they always take their records away with them. Somebody had left a Beatles record on the turntable. It was Hey Jude.
Oh my gosh.
And that kind of, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of that song in particular because it's got this whole ending that goes on forever. And I thought, I wish they'd kind of move on to the next song, please. But my own personal taste, I went down the kind of soundtrack road with John Barry, you know, the composer John Barry, and the James Bond themes. And he did a lot of adverts that I didn't know it was him, you know, like the girl with the sun in her hair and the flake adverts. But there was something about the music that just created this whole cinematic feel about it that I just loved.
Yeah.
So a lot of my stuff went down that kind of road, and rather than the pop music thing.
Okay.
Even by the time I joined the band, I'd been in sort of cabaret bands and stuff before and doing cover versions of Drifters songs and Elton John and things like that.
Yeah.
And I still did like all that stuff. I was almost frightened to expose myself into that. We're coming at the back end of punk here.
Yeah.
If you like Elton John or ABBA, you're at the door, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So I had to pretend I liked all these acts that I'd never actually heard of.
Yeah. Oh man, we actually have a lot in common. I have a similar story in that I was the only person in my family who was musical, and I was the baby of the family. My brother and sister are a decade older than me, and you know, I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor, so I didn't really get exposed. I mean, in our house, it was Kenny Rogers and Anne Murray and stuff like that, and so I would hear, you know. Well, I grew up on John Williams film music. I loved film music. Yeah. So my steady diet, you know, later in my teen years was John Williams, you know, the early film composers in my world, and then 80s pop radio. But I had to take it on myself to listen to that stuff. It wasn't until I think I was 22 when I finally, you know, I left home and moved to Nashville. I wanted to have a career down here. That's when I really started becoming exposed to that. But my whole world was a mix. It was half film music. I thought I wanted to be a film composer for a while, and I did just enough of that to realize that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah. But yeah, it's that your story is very familiar. I totally get that.
Yeah, no, and I still love it. In fact, my next trip down to Glasgow is to go to one of these events where it's all Hans Zimmer pieces. Yeah. You know, with a backdrop of movies and a live orchestra and all that. Have you been to any of those shows like that?
No, and it's funny you ask. He was here back in February, and I was going to go. There was something on my schedule. I couldn't get away. Yeah. Now I really regret it because a friend of mine bought me tickets to see the movie version of it a couple weeks later.
Right.
Oh, it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. It's absolutely mind-blowing. You're going to love it. It's incredible.
No, that's great, and I mean, I love him. He really does get a great sound, and you know, of course, Gladiator, the soundtrack to Gladiator. No, I would still verge on my favourite soundtrack would be Blade Runner, Vangelis.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
that's kind of the one. And I was even listening to another album of his quite recently, Spiral. Do you know that album, Spiral at all? That was one of my favourite when Walkmans first came in. I'd be walking about with that spiral going around my head.
That's great.
I loved that.
That's awesome. Okay, so even casual listeners, everybody knows the song "Don't You Forget About Me." I mean, it was featured in 1985 in the movie Breakfast Club, which really seemed to blow the doors open for you guys in the U.S. I mean, you were having success around the world, but for whatever reason, not as much in the U.S. yet, from what I've read. That really kind of opened the doors. It also cemented that song as one of the most iconic of the entire decade. I mean, you still hear it everywhere. And so for people who aren't aware, can you tell us the story of that song? Because it's kind of unique.
Yeah, I mean, there's various stories going around about. Everybody's got their own kind of memory of what happened. My recollection was, I'm on a plane. Well, I don't know if the whole band, but I was with Charlie, and I think we're flying from Los Angeles to somewhere. And this guy who with a few drinks, you know, we liked a good dram. The Scots, as you know, we invented whiskey, we invented alcohol, as well as golf, all the good stuff, right? But we're on this plane, and this guy was really raving about the band. You guys, Simple Minds and all that, these are great. It was it wasn't American, but he was a London guy. I didn't know we didn't know it was Keith Forsey.
Oh gosh!
He gave us a tape, a cassette. I'd love you to check us out. I'd love you to play this song. We just thought it was another kind of fan guy, enthusiastic. He and his song. We wanted to hear his song. I never even put it on. We buried it. We never even played it. Wow. Right? And a long time, a fair bit of time went by, and Jim had come back and said, Did you just get a cassette for somebody? Because somebody's been in touch, and the American label, I think it was A&M were on at the time, about this song for a movie that we've been asked to do. And we're like, oh, that arsehole we met on the plane.
Oh my gosh.
That's the kind of thing, you know, because as far as we were concerned, everybody was an arsehole, you know.
Right, right.
You're
Yeah,
that kind of arrogant young guys that think you're the bee's knees, right?
right.
But eventually, we thought, well, you better listen to this. And Bruce, our manager, you really need to take this seriously. This is a big deal.
Yeah,
We really need to, I think we should do this. I think we really need to do this. But all the time we're thinking, now, we never wrote the song. We've got enough of our own. What about one of you using one of ours?
yeah, right.
Oh, you're obviously going to think that your stuff's better than this
Sure.
thing. So it was just, I think it was just through pure pressure from both our management and the label. Plus, we're trying to kind of look at America. Obviously, we're trying to get into America. We're trying to get some ground done in there. We've done a few things already in clubs and toured and done little bits, but we never really got on the radio.
Yeah,
So ultimately, when we did agree to do it, and it was all done in one day, and even just a few hours. And of course,
Really?
we met Keith, and he was more sober. And he was a really lovely guy, and he was
Yeah.
so kind of, it was like instantly part of the lads, you know, when
Yeah.
you're in a band like that, you've got a circle of guys that outsiders, they need to kind of work their way in.
Yeah.
He was straight in the door, and you could tell he was a band man.
Yeah,
I think
right.
he was a drummer in the 70s and all that, so he was instantly one of the guys, and
Yeah.
it felt really good, and we just went and recorded it in a couple of hours. I think we were actually flying out of London that same day.
Oh my word.
So it was a kind of rush thing. We recorded it, I think, down in Olympic Studios somewhere just in the outskirts of London. Yeah. And of course, the rest is total history.
Yeah.
And it's been, I mean, the band, they're still playing it probably every day. They couldn't go out and play
Sure.
without doing that. Obviously,
Yeah.
I left the band quite a long time ago. So, and there was a whole maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20 years that I never even played it. I never really played the records anyway.
Yeah.
But you don't really go playing records. It's
Right.
only late now. And like we did a little thing like this with Steve Lillywhite yesterday. So it meant I better look at that record. And I've done a couple of other podcasts dealing with specific records. And that's the only reason I've kind of done my homework.
Yeah,
So I'll dig out the tracks on Spotify, and I'll go through them and see what can I remember here. No, but my actual memories of Don't You Forget About Me, because we never knew the movie was going to be that big. We never
Right.
guessed for 1 second.
Yeah.
We just thought, we'll just keep these people quiet and
Yeah.
do the bloody song.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what we did.
Yeah.
But of course, the American charts, as you'll know, Jim, it's like slowly creeping into the top 100 in the 70s, and weeks go by and it's in the 50s. Then we're hearing reports, oh yeah, this record's doing really, really well and the movie's going to be massive. And
Yeah.
before we know it, it's crawling right into the top 10, and it's starting to crawl up the charts. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, shit, we're at number one in America. Before we
That
kinda-
had to blow your mind.
Oh, totally. And I'm in a wee pub in Glasgow with my girlfriend, and and we get this call saying, you're number one in America. And I'm like, what am I doing in this pub? I should be in Los Angeles right now.
You get a limo back to the music store. You got some shopping to do.
Yeah, should have done that. buy the store with
Yeah.
no money. I mean,
Oh,
we're
man.
still really poor at that point.
Yeah. So when you cut that song, did you have any inkling that we might have some magic here? I mean, any sense of that?
Not really, because once we recorded it, we were such a rush. I don't think we even heard the playback.
Really?
I think we'd probably, is that all good? You'd put your parts down, a couple of quick overdubs, go straight on to do the vocals, you know, check it out. He's got a rough mix on the board. Be like, if anything else you need for this, Keith, are we all good? And he'd be like, no, it's all good. And I don't think we heard the mix for about a couple of weeks later.
Wow.
And then when I first heard the mix, I remember thinking, wow, it did sound really different. I was convinced that he'd actually very speeded it.
Really?
Because everything sounded like it was lifted out. The snare was really snappy
Yeah.
and crisp. And it just sounded like a pop record
Yeah.
that I don't think we'd ever really had
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And I've actually not even checked that. I wouldn't be surprised if it is like a couple of notches just north of the original key, so you can't actually play along with it. I don't know. Have you ever played
Sure.
along with it?
Yeah. In fact, I started, I've got about 40, 50 songs started for Arcade Orchestra. And I started that one, oh gosh, actually when I got this Korg keyboard not long ago, I was looking for the sound that you used in the in the verses. It's like a string machine. I think it was an old Roland RS-09, if I remember, something like that. Do you remember?
Well, I had one of those, but I think what I had in the verses would have been the Jupiter 8 or the Oberheim, the OBXA, which I had at the time. It was just to keep a really two-note thing as wide as possible, and just leave that kind of open fifth chord, so you're just kind of doing little as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very sparse. And
totally sparse.
Yeah,
because he obviously had that kind of brassy which was another sound on the Jupiter 8 as well.
Yeah,
which was kind of predetermined already. So he was looking for that jabby. It was almost like a synth pretending it's a brass section.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
When my mind, I was looking for the verse to be something like the song like was. Ice House, Great Southern Land. Do you know that song?
Yes.
Do you know the band Ice House from Australia? There's a song called Great Southern Land, and I think they use a Prophet 5.
Okay.
And it's just like a single note.
Yeah.
It's just so smooth and wide and beautiful. Right. You don't need any more than a couple of notes, you know. That's my thing.
Yeah, well, that track, it's brilliant in so many ways because there's a lot of different layers. It's not just one keyboard part. There's that very sparse. It's really just one note for a little bit, and then you bring a second note in, and then of course you got the iconic part in the chorus.
Yeah,
you know, and then there's like a choir pad thing. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there was a bunch of kind of tracking up to thicken it all up.
Yeah,
and I think there's even the dun dun. I can't remember, did I even do that on the piano?
I think, plus there's CP70, I think, in there, kind of buried.
CP70, that's right. CP7. There's another classic sound, Phil Collins. I mean, I took it from, we did a tour with Peter Gabriel opening up for him, and as soon as I heard him play Family Snapshot, you know, that Peter Gabriel, I'm like, oh, I need that keyboard. I need that. That was a must. Back to Denmark Street.
You probably spent a lot of time there. Yeah, it was so many iconic sounds. We'll jump. I've got some questions for you about that, because I got a lot of keyboard and synth buddies that are gonna freak over this. So fast forward a couple years, you obviously toured very heavily, but you ended up leaving the band, I think was it end of the 80s, beginning of 90s. Yeah. As someone who traveled the world myself, I did a lot of touring for almost 3 decades. I can totally understand many reasons why somebody would want to leave the road. But for the sake of the audience who is probably scratching their heads, why would somebody leave a gig like that at that point in time? Is that something you feel comfortable talking about? I mean,
yeah, sure. I mean, it's not something you do on a whim, and I had been thinking about it for quite some time. There was a whole thing that there was such a concentrated, kind of obvious move next. It was like rehearsal, write some stuff, into pre-production, into the studios, back to rehearsals, ready for the tour, and then start the whole ball rolling again. All running from 1985, well, probably all the way through the 80s, actually. We really didn't get a break at all. Even the first few years of the 80s, we done like 5 albums in 3 years or something like that.
Wow.
But by the time we get to Street Fighting Years, which is the last one I did, I really felt I'd kind of achieved everything musically that I wanted to achieve. And being on tour was never something being a musician wasn't something I'm blaming my mother for putting that accordion on me in the first place. It wasn't something that I would have opted to want to do.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in high school and you think, if I'm in a band, the girls will fancy me and all that they would never fancy anybody with an accordion on them. The accordion was not a comfortable... A guitar, a bass. Right. But some guy with a squeeze box, they're like... They make all these kind of behind your back. That's the guy, because I was actually on TV when I was really young and when I was getting into the first year in high school. Yeah. And it was the biggest mistake in my life because the whole duration of my high school years, guys would go...
you might get some girls, they'll just be the wrong girls.
Get the wrong big hairy ones. Girls with beards. They're like modern women today, beards and cocks.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's hilarious. Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We just want to give a quick shout out to our friends at ADK Microphones. I've used all kinds of mics throughout my career, and I can honestly say I've finally stopped searching for that holy grail studio microphone. I've been using their custom shop Z-Mod series to record some world-class guest artists for Arcade Orchestra, and their TFET series is top-notch as well and super affordable. So be sure to check out ADK mics at adkmic.com. Now back to Legends and Legacies.
Yeah, no, but apart from that, apart from feeling I've kind of satisfied as much as I wanted, and the album itself, Street Fighting Years, it was quite political, and it didn't go down well in America, and the dates kind of got all either cancelled or downsized. Jim wasn't comfortable about going back to a club scene out there, so we cancelled the whole American leg of the tour, and the next suggestion was, let's just all go back to Amsterdam, because we'd kind of committed a year out tax-wise to stay out of Britain. So you couldn't really go home, basically. So let's just go and start recording a new album, or start working and writing a new one. And I was like, here we go again. This is just non-stop. I was just tired of it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't think I've really got anything to offer at this point.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've often done before every single record, everything I've ever done, listen, Jim, I kind of rehearse going for a bus. Me jamming and me sitting doing with nothing in my head and saying, I mean, it's happened to me when I've had to do that, and it's actually worked out quite good. And I would put it down to sort of luck. But I think things through a lot before I even, and then I pretend, what about this? This maybe, like I've just done it for the first time. I've not done it for the first time at all. I've had a whole bunch of things locked up in my wee back diary head. So I had nothing at that point, and I didn't want to sit down with nothing.
Yeah.
I would have needed to take a breather anyway.
Yeah.
So I thought, fuck this, I'm going home.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this tax year.
Yeah.
I don't want to do another album. I don't want. I'm just going to stop right now. And that wasn't really an option, the way the politics of the band was working.
Yeah.
It was almost like, well, what are you chucking it?
Yeah.
And if that's what it means, then I'm chucking it. If that's what, if going home, if that's what that means.
Yeah.
And that was basically all it was.
Yeah. I don't think people who haven't been on the road, of course, I've always said, they only see 2 hours of our life. The glamorous 2 hours.
That's right.
But there's another 22 hours where it's planes, trains, automobiles. And it is, you pay a heavy price.
Yeah, and I was drinking heavily as well, and I could tell the direction where things were going. It was going down a rock and roll direction that I was getting quite uncomfortable with it, and it took a long time to kind of come out of that. You know, you've had a decade of that, and it's grown to such a, and everybody's saying, why would you leave a band? Look at this, they're massive, you know, how can you walk away from that? Was that no your dream? When in fact my dream was more to sit in a studio and create music with the speakers and use technology, and I was excited about that. I was more excited about getting into that shop in Denmark Street than I was going on stage at Wembley.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It's great. Yeah, totally. I totally understand. Yeah, I don't think it's always surprising, I think, when people hear that, but I totally understand. You have to live that, I think, for people to really get it. But it is a grueling lifestyle. I mean, this thing that I'm pursuing right now, I mean, I had a little bit of that. I mean, I was nowhere near what you got to experience, but I was musical director for a very popular artist in our genre who's been around for, at the time, it was close to 4 decades, and it was a great gig. I mean, I got to travel the world and have some amazing experiences, and it's what I dreamed of doing as a teenager. But after almost 3 decades, you know, I had people that were thinking, why would you leave that to go pursue something where there's no guarantees? That I haven't had a paycheck in a year and a half, which is crazy. But I really believe in this dream that we're doing now, and I think it's going to bring people a lot of joy. There's so many people my age who want to experience the 80s again. Yeah, and
it sounds really exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like we've got a chance to...
Yeah, there's also that other thing, Jim, when you know the buzz, when the moments before you go on stage and the adrenaline's up and the people go cheer and a big massive crowd all go mental. there's unquestionably an addiction to that.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
so when you stop, that's why after a gig, you can't go back to a hotel and go to your bed.
Yeah.
That's just not an option.
Yeah.
You got to kind of let get that all out somehow. So
Right.
you're then into 2, 3, 4 in the morning
Yeah.
before you can actually be normal and actually fall asleep.
Right.
It
Sure.
takes years to get away from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Favorite gig you ever played?
Oh, favorite gig. Well, I think Radio City was pretty good. New York.
Yep.
Because you're right in the heart of the city of New York. I mean, by that point, if you're doing Radio City Music Hall, you've cracked it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that, and every celebrity in the green room is, even though that actual night when we played Radio City, Charlie and I buggered off to a club downtown and avoided the green room thing, the
That's
Legend
funny.
room.
Yeah.
But and of course Glasgow, you know, Glasgow, the hometown. One of the early days of Glasgow, when we knew we were kind of in the door.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times when you're in the band and you've got your early doors, you made your first record, you don't really know if you're going to get a second record.
Right.
You know, obviously the material you've got to that point is taking a lifetime to get. Now you've got nothing for the next one. The
Right.
record, and what happened to us, we made a kind of dodgy second album. The record company hated it. It was too experimental, but actually, in retrospect, it's actually quite creative. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we wouldn't have got the opportunity to do that. But again, I would thank John Leckie, who was our producer at the time. But obviously, when you get that point and you think, oh, we've got our heels dug in, we're going to be in music, we're going to be musicians, we're a band, we're professional. We're getting up in the morning to get to the next venue and do the gig. So you
Yeah.
come back to Glasgow, kind of victorious.
Yeah.
And you're
Sure.
doing, but I mean, it was still kind of small theatres and kind of clubs and stuff like that, but they were packed.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody was just waiting for you. You couldn't play a wrong note.
Yeah.
And of course, a funny thing happened. I'll just quickly go into this quick story. We'd bought our own PA and we're come back in. We're playing this one big gig in Edinburgh. It was like, we've got an album, it's in the charts. And we didn't really know how to work with PA properly.
Yeah.
Within a couple of notes, the whole thing went dead and we're all stood on stage. And the only way onto the stage was through the crowd, so we couldn't get off again. We're kind of trapped on a stage. And all you could hear was the acoustic drums when the whole PA's cut off. You know that sound?
Yes, I
And then
do.
he sort of fizzles out to nothing. And I must admit, it's the first time I really wished I had an accordion in me. I could have pulled that thing out.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
We
And
did
of course, there was Live Aid. Live Aid's
Right.
one that you would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I do remember Live Aid, even though you're only on for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've heard recent interviews with Jim talking about his trouser choices. And I think he burst the arse in his trousers because during that gig, I'm looking at Jim and thinking, that's a shit pair of trousers you've got on there. You know, the whole place, I don't know, it's like 100,000 people in there and maybe a billion online. And
Yeah.
you just don't think about any
Sure.
of that. You're thinking about your immediate thing that's going on round about you. And it could be quite mundane stuff, you know?
Yeah. I watched that not long ago on YouTube, and it's such an iconic moment.
Yeah.
I mean, no getting
It is
around
a
it.
historic moment, wasn't it?
It sure was. So you guys got to collaborate, obviously, with some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, you opened for Peter Gabriel, you were talking about, among others. Bono came and did some stuff with you guys, I believe. Is there anyone you wish you could go back and work with from those days that you didn't get a chance to?
I've not really thought about that. I mean, obviously Peter Gabriel would be great to do. I mean, the things that he only came on stage with us and kind of sang his Biko song and all that. He's always been a huge. I've loved Peter Gabriel right from those days. I saw him recently in Glasgow, and it still blows me away for a guy in his. It must be in his mid-70s, and that I.O. album.
Yeah.
And even releasing a track every full moon, you're like, wow,
Right.
he's just God. And
Yeah.
he's appropriately named. He's like the Angel Gabriel.
Seriously. That's great.
Yes. No,
Absolutely.
but no, I can't think. I'm not that kind of guy either that can sit down with his idols and do stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not that kind of guy.
Mm. Well, you are the kind of guy that played one of the most iconic synth riffs in music history. So don't sell yourself short. So on that note, no pun intended, all my synth buddies are going to be upset if we don't talk shop for at least a minute.
Okay.
So I've researched your rig many times, but so in those days, like I think it was Live Aid, your rig was a CP70 with MIDI. You had a MIDI
Yeah.
retrofit done on it.
Yeah.
You had a Jupiter 8. Actually, you say it. I shouldn't say it. You should say it.
Yeah, but you're probably not better than me because a lot of this stuff I can't remember. There was some stuff off the side, obviously. The Jupiter 8 was with my fizzy, stringy sound.
Yep.
I had the DX7 on top of the Yamaha. I must admit, the DX7, the action on the little keyboard, I loved it.
Same here.
It was one
Yep.
of these things that you're really nice to play. The lovely spring back action. You didn't a lot of synths you kind of hit the bump. If you get used to the piano, you get tons of mistakes on synthesizers,
Right.
and
Yep.
you don't. The response is too much. You
Yeah.
can't just touch it a little bit and it won't play. The bloody thing plays all the time.
Yeah.
It sounds like you just hit two notes next to each other. The DX was really cool for that.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't really learn how to actually program it because
Very
the
few people did.
algorithms. I know. I attempted it and I did make up a few of my own sounds, but it was like that's another world altogether. As soon as you
Yeah.
change one bit of that algorithm,
Yeah.
you've just screwed up the whole thing's gone.
Exactly.
It's like
Right.
I'm losing it. I'm losing it. It's gone. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get it back unless you reset the thing back to
Yep.
factory.
Yep. Yep.
So there was that, and then I had an emulator too, which
Okay.
was quite cool, and I put some samples that I'd actually made myself on that. That was a funny keyboard as well, with a big 5-inch.
Yep. So were you loading floppies during the show?
Not really. I managed to thin it down what we needed to do. I did pre-record on it an introduction for Book of Brilliant Things,
Yep.
which is a wee kind of cello thing.
Yep.
And I used to just run that off as a recording. And I did. That was one of the very first things I ever actually played on it. And I never quite worked out how to sequence it properly and quantize it properly. So I just played it live, like two things that weren't quite in time with each other. I just thought, I'm not going to leave it because I'll probably erase it and I'll probably never play it the same again.
Right,
So I just left it,
Yeah.
which was quite good. I had an Akai S3000 that I'd made some. Funny you're mentioning having thunder outside. When I first got the Akai, I'd bought two amazing wee shops microphones, and I ran out and sampled the thunder. And
Oh,
I put
wow.
it in the Akai. And as well as that, I also sampled all the road crew whispering into the microphone. So all the voices went over at the same time. All And I said, say a message to your loved one or something, say,
Yeah.
Jim Kerr's an asshole. Something like that,
Right.
So all these whispers were in there. And at the very start of the show, this is a Street Fighting Years one, I'd take a couple of notes at the piano, so I'm just using it for MIDI triggers. And one of them would be that thunder sample,
Yeah.
which was absolutely stunning when it came out the PA. It just, the whole bass rumbled. And
Yeah.
I queued it up with the lighting guy that said, after the third rumble, drop the curtain, right? So I knew when I was in charge of the curtain, basically.
That's great.
And then I'd hit another note that all the whispers would come in, and that kind of sounded like rain. So you know, and then I started the gig, which I thought was a great start.
Yeah, that's great.
What else did I have?
You had an Oberheim.
I did have an Oberheim, you're right, and I had a Hammond organ.
Okay.
And I had a D50 in a rack.
Okay.
You know, the D50 rack?
Yeah,
I also had quite a few other things. I had the D2080. It's a two rack unit.
Yeah.
I also had a couple of Echo Effects, SD80s, SD90 or something.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of rack stuff. This was by the time I got to my ultimate setup.
Right.
And I controlled it all with a little mixer, a Yamaha VCA mixer. The big guy, Dougie, who's sadly not with us anymore, he set up a program for me and worked off volume pedals. I mean, the volume pedals are pretty rough stuff. It's a rough mix, but when you're in the PA and you're in the room, you're in the vibe, it didn't really matter. It was only when we later to come and record the Live in the City of Light album that you thought, I need to fine-tune the mixes that I've actually done, because I just sent the sound guy a stereo pair.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want him in control of all my keyboard mix.
Right. So you were kind of, were you mixing as you go with the pedals?
Yeah, I was mixing as I go. I'd have it all mostly, I'd have a patching thing that would patch the pianos going to maybe the Oberheim and the Jupiter 8, and I'd have those two on pedals. I'll hit the chord and I'll fade one in, whatever, and then I'd have the DX, maybe it's going to the rack stuff, and that's doing the D50, or it's doing the emulator. So I had all various options on how things were going to get patched, and you know yourself, that's a major job.
And any horror stories from that, stepping on the wrong pedal at the wrong time?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, that was one of the little patching box was actually a nightmare. I eventually had to throw something over the top of it because a certain blue light changed it.
Oh, wow.
So right in the middle of something, you're thinking there. And I remember we used to have this, there was a kind of funny harmonica sound in the DX, and one of the presets on it, which I used it. I think maybe somebody like Stevie Wonder had used it, or it was a famous record. You know the one that's got the harmonica on it?
Yep.
Well, I kind of tried to do like a wee harmonica thing on one of the tracks that we did as well, but I never really liked the sound of it very much.
Yeah.
Sure as hell that would go to the bloody harmonica sound when just when you didn't want to, you know, you want to hear some big, deep, mysterious noise, and then comes this bloody harmonica.
Oh, yeah, we've the guy that I worked with, my predecessor, who was the keyboard tech. I mean, it was a massive keyboard rig, and back in those days, they would load samples in Akai samplers. It was before, it was before digital audio in the computer, so all the background tracks and stems would be loaded. He'd be loading one during the current song and then loading all night long. Well, if you loaded the wrong cartridge, you're up the creek. And one time he did it.
Get another one, wait for it to load. Yes. They're not loading fast either.
Yeah. And so he had a song called Go West, Young Man. And at the beginning was this horse whinny. And so what should have been a background vocal through the PA completely isolated this horse, So crazy moment.
No, I mean, it was when MIDI came in, it totally blew the thing wide open. It was like, thank you.
Yeah.
No, suddenly I'm like this with keyboards.
Right.
Try to balance them.
Yeah.
One time all the keyboards fell on Charlie.
Oh gosh.
He was behind me, and I had it balanced in a Wurlitzer. A Wurlitzer's got a kind of bevel in the top, right?
Yeah.
So I've got that with a couple of bits of wedged wood to try and set it up, but the whole thing just went over the back and landed on his back. He's playing the guitar, holding up the piano, and I'm trying to pull this gear back.
I can't think of a worse nightmare. It's
horrendous. No, there's been loads of that.
That's crazy. Hey, thanks for listening. In case you're wondering, what's Arcade Orchestra? Well, what if you could go back and actually relive the 80s? Not just listen to the music, but actually travel back in time and experience the best of the decade in a fully immersive experience that engages all 5 senses. We are building this experience, and it's called Arcade Orchestra. If you'd like to know more, be sure to follow us on our socials, YouTube channel, and arcadeorchestra.com. Now back to Legends and Legacies. Okay, so we're rounding the bend. So a good song has, I would say, the extraordinary ability to take us back to a specific time and place in our lives. You've heard the expression, the soundtrack of our lives. Everybody my age says that the 80s were the soundtrack of their lives. So you were a big part of some iconic songs that do that for many of us. Are there any songs or any music that do that for you?
I mean, I think loads and loads. I think even when I said earlier, I was listening, I'm drawn to 60s music.
Mm-hmm.
I hear anything, something like Gordon Lightfoot.
Sure.
He had a great song. He had amazing songs, really good songs. That at the time that you're just hearing this stuff on the radio, but as soon as I hear stuff anything like that now, I'm straight back in that. And I was thinking about this whole thing because we nearly touched on it earlier about how the 80s defined with technology really defined the sound more than any other decade, I think. Coupled with the fact that digital was just about to come in. A lot of people didn't even know what digital was. They were almost frightened to admit, to actually go into the conversation, because then they'd have to explain they actually understood what it was, that kind of thing.
Right.
But when I listen to these 60s things and I hear things that go, they've all got a kind of ingredient of a catchy or a hooky really just a gimmick, a
Mm-hmm.
ding ding, or something that all stops. Something they've all got to work out together to make this event happen.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that with a song called "I Travel" that we've got. I don't know. Do you know that "I Travel" song? One of the
I
early
don't think
ones of
so.
ours. It was one of the first ones. It was kind of a really disco thing.
Yeah.
And it was only reminded recently. We used to call it three bangs because I was trying to do that thing when I'm trying to put something in that's kind of hooky and catchy and a bit
Mm-hmm.
gimmicky. And it was like, it got this break and it's good boom, 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 din, and din, 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 and then boom, boom, boom. And a really cheesy, shitey idea. I obviously got the boot and it was a terrible idea.
Right.
But when I was listening back to it, and I think I really went straight back into that whole period of trying to do something, and it's failed. Now that's okay to fail,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm no longer frightened or embarrassed by attempting something and it's a
Yeah.
terrible idea.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was almost like you're so embarrassed by, oh, I don't want to even attempt to show you this.
Right. Right.
But no, there's loads and loads of stuff that do that, Jim. Nothing's springing out to me. Pretty much everything I listen to, and it is nostalgic wise. I'm straight back to where I was
Sure.
when I was a young guy and I'm
Yeah.
kind of chasing women and that
Yeah.
whole thing. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
That's music is a universal language. It's really
It is.
amazing how it has the ability to do that.
I know.
Okay, so here's one for you. In all my research for all this stuff, I've realized some of the biggest touring acts of the last 5-10 years are they're all from the 80s. Journey, Toto, Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, Simple Minds, and Genesis. They're the
Yeah.
biggest gross, other than Taylor Swift, which is a world unto herself.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest grossing tours of the last few years. The biggest movie of the last decade was Top Gun, Maverick. So nostalgia happens. You were just talking about this, the music that you grew up on.
Yeah.
Nostalgia happens in every generation, but for the first time in history, we've got an entire generation who envies their parents. Like my daughter envies me for what I grew up with.
That's true.
They love their parents' movies and music and pop culture. I don't think
I've
we've
never
ever
thought-
seen that degree of nostalgia.
No. Right.
And we've touched on this a little bit, but any theories on why you think 80s nostalgia? Like, what was it about that particular decade that makes it such a draw for people?
When you put it like that, you really, I've never really thought about it like that. Because it's true. My kids as well. I've got older and younger kids. My oldest is like 34. My youngest is like 14. But they're no, it's like I don't know what it is. I would go down the road of, and I'm so out of touch, and I'm maybe completely wrong, but I think there's no kind of thing happening that they've not got their own identity.
Yeah.
I don't think they've had their own identity for decades, ever since, unfortunately, the digital age and the presets have kind of dictated and put out the terms for everyone. I think they've taken away the identity for somebody to create something original. And I think the further down the road we're actually looking now with the AIs and things getting composed for you and written for you. I spend half the time, because all the presets on these plugins are amazing, there's got 7,000 bloody sounds to audition that will fit into this thing.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, well, we're going to limit what I've got to, and I've actually kind of gone down this road to just a couple of things that I'm just going to use for everything and fine tune them to suit what I need. And you know what I mean, I've got a feeling a lot of it's to do with they're not being challenged enough to come up with their own stuff. And the 80s is such a defined kind of sound that it's easy to kind of like it. It's easy to go on and latch onto it.
Yeah.
I can't come up with anything more than that, Jim.
Yeah. It's there's so many aspects to it. The interview I was just editing the other day with Amy Grant, I asked her the same question. She said something pretty profound. She said, wherever we were in those days, we were fully present. There were no cell phones. We weren't looking at a screen all the time.
Yeah.
And we had whole new horizons of creativity, along with a very patient audience. And the last thing she said that really hit me was the creativity that we explored back then. It had a long incubation period. You didn't just go and create a song in an afternoon. I mean, sometimes you did, but it took time. And the audience would go and they'd buy a record, a vinyl, and they would take it home and they would listen to it from beginning to end. It was a journey.
It
So there's, I
was.
mean, that's just one aspect, but
No, it's brilliant. It's really good, and the other stuff that went with it. You know, they're looking forward to going to the concert. They kind of wear the clothes. You're in. They're all on the same page.
yeah,
In a whole field where you're
yeah,
right. They're on their own page.
yeah,
They've got their device there, and it's their own world.
yeah.
And that's all they're getting fed and into this instead of finding it for themselves.
Hmm.
I really think that the long-term consequences of our children being on these devices, there's going to be a heavy price to pay for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything you're listening to today that really excites you?
Um, what have I been on Spotify again today? I've actually, yeah. I've actually been asked. There's a young girl on the island getting married, and she's asked me to play this thing at her wedding. And I've thought, oh shit, and in church, you know, on a piano on my own. Oh my God, what is it you want? You know, immediately, I'm already freaking out. And she says, oh, it's Mazzy Star.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Mazzy Star?
Yeah, yeah.
So I've looked at this a girl doing a cover version of it, and it's specifically that she wants. So I've been playing it all day, and it's kind of I'm like, well, this is really pretty cool. And the girl herself, Mazzy Star, you can see she's a kind of fragile wee girl. Is kind of really innocent, and it's beautiful kind of music. You know,
Yeah.
I can see why a lot of people kind of feel her pain.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way maybe Morrissey or somebody like that would home into some kid that's going to college. That's the kind of artist I think that does reach people.
Yeah.
Rather than the big mega production star and you know, I mean, the Whitney or the Taylor Swift, even though my daughter loves Taylor Swift, and I do too, actually.
Yeah.
I think Taylor
She's
Swift's
a great writer.
amazing.
She's written some great
fantastic.
songs.
That song, actually, the song that I kept playing for her, what was it called again? It was like, it was a kind of slow one. You don't really hear it often. I think it was on 2 albums ago. It was about a guy dying in the beach or something like that. Anyway,
I'd have to hear it. Yeah, I can't remember.
Brilliant.
Okay, almost done. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
My children.
I love that you didn't even have to think to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, the music, I can't take really credit at all. I'm still so grateful for the fact I've not actually had to go and get a job.
Yeah,
Even though I
seriously.
left that band almost 40 years ago, and I'm still living an amazing life off the back of everything that we've just been discussing just now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far if you were to pick out specific pieces of music or tracks, I mean, I really love, maybe it's because we've been talking to Steve Lillywhite recently. I love Up in the Catwalk as a kind of synthy sounding, really bang record. It was like bang. I don't think it really did anything in America. But the greatest achievements, in fact, I was involved with a local thing with the kids in the school here, and I was more nervous about it. Was a competition for the Scottish School Pipe Band Championships, and it was more of a wider. It wasn't just a pipe band; it was more electronics. We had synchronized stuff up with loops, and we actually used a Peter Gabriel Biko bagpipe sound and stuff in it. And when it came to the result time, I was really bricking it, and I was in this big school full of all these kids, and I was like shitting it, and we won, you know. And I was like, "Oh my God, we won it! I couldn't believe it." It was really one of these moments of, I can't believe we done that, you know.
That's great.
So it's not a case of how big the gig is, you know.
Right.
It's because I still play up in the care home every Sunday. I take my accordion and I play in an old folks home,
Oh,
and
wow.
I get the same reaction when I look at somebody who's really enjoying hearing this, you know, like some old woman who, you know, they're lost with dementia, and they'll ask for the same tune over and over again. So you're like, you can get away with doing a 15-minute set, no bother, and keep playing the same stuff.
Wow.
But no, I think it's the fact that the achievement of them still alive. I think that's something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nothing to sneeze at.
I've had a serious encounter with alcohol and drugs, and I've been sober for 28 years.
Good for you.
And I'm thinking life's amazing. So you know, so what more do I need?
Yeah, it's I love that. It's not something to take for granted, for sure.
Absolutely.
Last question, then I got something I want to just say. Is there anything a decent interviewer should ask you that I haven't asked you? Because I'm still new at this. I'm not a
Oh,
interviewer.
you're doing great then. No, I think you've done a fantastic job, but I can't think of anything. I think you've been very professional. You've obviously got your key questions, and I've been trying not to drift too much because I do drift a lot.
Oh, then no, that's what we want. This is all about you telling your story. One of the things we're so excited about with this is all of these artists that my generation grew up with. They're all, in their 70s, give or take.
Yeah.
And this is one last shot to give everybody a voice and tell their story, because
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
that's important to me. Like early on, one of my things is this is not a cover band. This is, and it's not an orchestra show either, even though it says Arcade Orchestra is in the name. There will be orchestra on stage, but it's a cutting edge pop show. The whole point is we want to honor the artists who gave us this music that defined a generation. So
you must send me some sort of video
absolutely.
or something of the show when you've
I will.
completed
And
it all. I'd love to see it.
Yep. And when we start touring, of course, we want you to come. We'd love to have you come be a part of it or whatever. So on that note, 20 years after I think it was right around 20 years after you left Simple Minds, Jim Kerr, for those of you who don't know, Jim is lead singer, wrote a blog post called The Spirit of MacNeil. I'm sure you've read it. Did you not know this? Oh, you got to read it. It's on the Simple Minds website. I'll send it to you.
All right.
So I'm glad. This is an honor for me to be able to say this then. He wrote the following. He said, "Was Mick, in fact, the genius that many Simple Minds fans have made him out to be? Without an iota of doubt, he was all that and more. In the end, the most respect we could offer to Mick when he left was to acknowledge that nobody could ever replace him."
Yeah, irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Well,
so I thought that was really classy of him. I thought that was a great. I would have assumed you would have seen that a long time ago. I think he wrote it years ago.
No, that's really sweet. No, I've not heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a testament for. I mean, they're still out playing shows, doing lots of stuff. I think they did that thing not too long ago. Was it the MTV something where they played Don't You Forget About Me? And of course, Taylor Swift is in the front row with Selena Gomez, and they're all just loving it.
Yeah.
That music is timeless. And so on behalf of all the keyboard and synth players, especially who've been impacted by your work, we couldn't agree more with what Jim said. You played a riff that I can't wait to play and expose people to. It's going to be, I mean, let's get down to it. One of the reasons I'm doing this is so I can be in all these bands that I grew up listening to. That's really what this comes down to.
Yeah, it's good enough reason.
But yeah, we just want to say thank you. I mean, you had a big part in some timeless music that has impacted countless people's lives. And I've had so many messages from people who can't wait to see this experience because it's the only way that they're going to get to relive those days again.
Oh, that's really sweet. I really appreciate that, Jim. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, anything else that you wanted to... Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you. Are there any projects that you're working on or anything that you want to talk about? Anything like that?
I've actually hooked up with a couple of old colleagues, Derek Forbes and Brian McGee. We've kind of started doing little things and possibly maybe write some new material. Nothing's really evolved yet. We're kind of more... I keep seeing us, because I've been doing this care home thing, I keep seeing us as three old men in a care home, right? And we're losing... I can imagine this as a kind of film, right? We're losing our mind, obviously, and we're kind of, don't you remember who I used to be? You know, well, I don't know who you used to be, but you know who I used to be? You know, these three old guys that were in a band to kind of try to recall memories of stuff. I think that would make a really good scene for something. But no, I'm sure we won't go that far.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the way I see it at the moment. But as for actually doing anything, I've got a couple of projects on the go that I've not kind of finished yet. And I've done a couple of local wee films and soundtrack things that I've not... Life's really good. I can do really what I like.
Yeah.
And when I like. Yeah. In fact, when my wife lives in Glasgow and my younger kid's still in school, And I've decided to move up to Barra. This is the island that I'm on, and just set up and start kind of putting a wee library of stuff together. Whether something comes of it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I really don't care. I'm kind of just enjoying it every day. It's brilliant. Life's really good.
What a gift. Well, please, if you do anything that you want out there, by all means, send it, and we'll be glad to tell everybody about it. So
no problem.
Mick, thank you so much. This really is incredible.
Thank you, Jim. I've really enjoyed our wee chat here. It's been great doing that old road again and reliving some of those memories. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well,
and good luck with the show, and I'm really looking forward to see how it turns out.
Thank you. Well, we will keep you posted, and So thanks again. This is a huge honor for us.
Fantastic, man. See you later.
Talk to you soon.
Right, bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got some amazing things in the pipeline, but we need your help. So please be sure to like, subscribe, follow us on our socials at Arcade Orchestra, or drop us a line, and we will keep working to bring you some amazing guests. Our next episode features another legend, Mike Lindup of Level 42. You've heard their songs like Something About You and Lessons in Love, so stay tuned, keep being rad, and see you next time on Legends and Legacies.